Did you know the Great Collie once won a death match against a huge WWE star? Or that he was pulled from a major event because he failed a substance test? Probably not, right? That's because WWE would rather keep those little details buried. But don't worry, we've got plenty more of these shocking Collie moments up our sleeve. So sit tight, because we're about to spill all the juicy secrets WWE doesn't want you to know about the Great Collie. Collie's secret exit.
Ladies and gentlemen, the World Heavyweight Champion, the Great Collie.
Remember the Great Collie? Yep, the giant Indian WWE star who could pretty much crush you with a handshake. Well, he packed his bags and said goodbye to the WWE back in 2014. After stomping around the ring for years, he decided it was time to head back home to India and start something of his own, a wrestling school and promotion called Continental Wrestling Entertainment, CWE. Think of it as the WWE's Indian cousin, but with more curry and fewer folding chairs. For a while, nobody really knew why Khali left WWE. I mean, he was a big deal, literally and figuratively. But after 3 long years of keeping quiet, Khali finally spilled the beans on what made him take this big step. Here's what happened. According to a report by ANI, Khali opened up about his time in the WWE and had a few things to get off his massive chest. In his own words, the WWE has failed in India. They thought they would leave the Great Khali after using him. I tried to leave WWE long before, but each time I tried, they offered me a contract. He went on to say, finally in 2014, I decided to leave it once my contract ended and decided not to work with them ever again. Then I came back and opened CWE in Punjab, which is doing well. And guess what? He's feeling pretty good about the future, as long as the youth keep themselves fit and say nope to drugs. Yes, that means skipping the dubious protein shakes from shady gym bros. Khali also said that if wrestling in India is handled in a better way with proper coaching and facilities, it has a bright future. It's a known fact that an Indian sportsman has a weak mentality. But here's the catch. They feel that the consumption of drugs will help in enhancing their performance and will help them in clinching a medal. Even though they receive too much of love after winning medals, they lose concentration on sports. Khali urged the next generation of athletes to steer clear of doping and focus on their game, the natural way. And if anyone knows how to play the long game, it's Khali. He didn't just stop with wrestling either. You've probably seen him pop up in some films. And if you're a Big Boss fan, you'll remember him nearly taking the trophy in season 4. He's a real-life multitasking machine. But the one thing he never shortcuts? Hard work. The death match. There aren't many wrestlers who can proudly say, yeah, I beat The Undertaker clean in a match on TV. I mean, let's face it, the guy's basically a walking legend, and beating him is like slaying a mythical creature. But you know who can? The Great Collie. Yep, the giant from India, who can crush a watermelon with his bare hands, actually managed to take down The Undertaker in a match. And no, this wasn't some fluke or backstage brawl. It was legit and clean, and it happened right in front of the cameras. Khali pulled it off during Judgment Day 2006, a pay-per-view showdown that left people gasping, probably because they couldn't believe The Undertaker had met his match. But you know the surprising part? Before that epic battle, Khali had only wrestled on SmackDown twice, and both times he made sure to put some notches on his belt with wins over Funaki. Yes, the guy everyone remembers for being fun, but not so much for winning, and Rey Mysterio, who was the world champion at the time. Beating Rey Mysterio is impressive on its own, so that was no small feat either. However, no one knew much about him back then, other than the fact that he was this really big dude who went after Undertaker right away. Up until that point, Khali hadn't really sold any moves, so no one knew how things would play out against The Undertaker. Their showdown at Judgment Day 2006 lasted around 8 minutes, and let's just say Khali was in control for most of it. The dead man barely got a chance to fight back. His only real moment of offense came when he managed to trap Khali in the ropes. Other than that, it was all Khali, all the time. Khali quickly shook off that moment, landed a big boot to The Undertaker's face, and followed up with his signature chop to the head. And just like that, The Undertaker sold it like he was completely knocked out. Khali, of course, took a moment to celebrate, then hit another boot for good measure. To top it off, Khali pinned him with just 1 foot on his chest. The Undertaker didn't even flinch. Now, why would WWE want you to forget this? Simple. Khali spent the last 6 years of his career as more of a comedic character, and WWE probably doesn't want you to remember that at one point, this guy took down the nearly unbeatable Undertaker with a head chop. Looking back, they probably thought it was a great move. But now, Vince McMahon is likely shaking his head, wondering, what were we thinking? Missing magnetism. When you think of Andre the Giant, you don't just remember his size, you remember his presence. He had this warm, almost larger-than-life aura that made people love him instantly, both in and out of the ring. He wasn't just a spectacle, he had this unique charm that connected with audiences everywhere. But when it comes to the Great Collie, well, let's just say things are a bit different. So what does Khali bring to the table, other than some famously rough matches? Sure, he's huge, and his size alone is enough to turn heads, but being a giant in wrestling isn't just about towering over everyone. It's about how you use that size hypnotize and connect with the crowd. And unfortunately for Khali, he didn't quite have that magic touch. Let's be real. It's not just about how many words you can say or even how fluently you can say them. It's about how you make people feel when you step into the ring. Andre didn't need to say much. His charisma did the talking for him. He could captivate an audience without uttering a single word. Khali, on the other hand, lacked that spark. You could call him great by name, but when it came to his actual star power, not so much. His matches were often more infamous than exciting, and his ability to grab the crowd's attention didn't come naturally. WWE tried everything to make the Great Collie a star. They pushed him hard, straight to the moon and back, but it never quite worked. Why? Well, beyond his massive size, there wasn't much else to him. Sure, people noticed when he stepped into the ring, but once he started moving around, most fans lost interest just as quickly. Let's be honest, wrestling purists probably roll their eyes when they hear Khali's name. He wasn't a technical wizard like Bret Hart, didn't have the undeniable charisma of someone like Big Show, and when it came to cutting a promo, forget about it. The guy struggled to string together anything that could rally the crowd or spark excitement. But despite all of that, Khali still became India's top professional wrestler. Maybe it's because he wasn't pulling in die-hard fans who love the art of wrestling or the storytelling that comes with it. WWE may not have seen him draw new viewers or attract long-term attention as they hoped, but in India, Khali was a phenomenon. The truth about Khali's managers. Khali's English skills weren't exactly his strong suit, so WWE did something pretty clever. They gave him managers to do the talking. During his early days, Khali had two different managers to help him get over with the audience. Up was Sean Daivari, who WWE paired with Khali in a storyline where Daivari basically unleashed Khali on The Undertaker, setting him up as this unstoppable force. However, that partnership didn't last long. Fast forward to 2007, and WWE gave Khali a new manager, Ranjan Singh. This was a bit of an upgrade for Khali in terms of communication. Singh wasn't just his manager, he was also billed as Khali's interpreter, doing all the promos and smack talk on his behalf. Now here's the funny part. Ranjan Singh wasn't some veteran manager or even a wrestler. Nope, he was actually a WWE writer named Dave Kapoor, who'd been working behind the scenes for years. The company just needed someone who could pass as Indian or at least look the part, so they put Kapoor in front of the camera, handed him a mic, and made him Khali's voice. The on-screen relationship got even weirder when WWE decided to announce that Khali and Ranjan Singh were brothers. Yeah, they went full soap opera mode for that one. Once that storyline wrapped up, Ranjan wasn't needed anymore in Khali's matches, and he quietly faded into the background. So why would WWE want to hide this? Well, it's not exactly the kind of thing they want to advertise. That they took one of their backstage writers, threw him on TV, and made him play Khali's manager just because he looked the part. It's one of those behind-the-scenes decisions that WWE prefers to sweep under the rug. They needed someone, anyone, to help Khali look legit, and Kapoor happened to be the guy who fit the bill. The Snake Charmer match. When the Great Collie made his way down the ramp to confront Randy Orton at Battleground, you might have expected him to pull out a punji. Yes, that's a kind of flute. Stop laughing back there and try to hypnotize the Viper down from the cage. Instead, he went with the classic approach of throttling him. But let's rewind to one of the most head-scratching WWE moments ever. September 27th, 2013, on SmackDown. In a match between Santino Marella and Heath Slater, Khali was in Santino's corner, while Jinder Mahal from the 3MB crew was backing Slater. During the match, Mahal decided to pull out a recorder, the musical kind, not the tape recorder, and give his best Snake Charmer performance, trying to charm the Cobra Santino pretends to wield.
What's he doing?
Then there was also Khali, who abruptly jumped onto the apron, not to be outdone. He grabbed a piccolo, the tiny version of a flute, and started playing it, presumably to compete with Mahal's Snake Charm act.
He's Snake Charm. Yeah, he's trying to charm the Cobra.
The whole scene was as ridiculous as it sounds, and the dubbed-in music only made it worse. It was like a bad circus act in the middle of a wrestling match. According to Moliere, comedy's job is to correct us while making us laugh. It's hard to say what he'd make of Khali's attempt to hypnotize Santino's Cobra in the middle of a match, but it probably wouldn't be flattering. While the idea might have seemed amusing on paper, in reality, it put the fans to sleep rather than making them laugh. The whole spectacle was so cringeworthy that it's the kind of thing that makes wrestling fans wince. The match was more of a joke than a real contest, and you could tell WWE had to pump in crowd noise to make it sound like people actually cared. The only cheers came at the end, when the pinfall signaled that the ordeal was finally over. The Snake Charmer match is definitely one of those moments wrestling fans would rather forget like the next entry. The bizarre Punjabi Prison Match. Not many wrestlers can say they've had a match type designed specifically for them, but the Great Collie, he's in that exclusive club. While legends like The Undertaker have signature matches like the Casket Match and Buried Alive, WWE decided to give Khali his very own unique match, the infamous Punjabi Prison Match. Why, you ask? That's a mystery we're all still trying to figure out. The strange part, when this wild creation made its debut at the 2006 Great American Bash, Khali wasn't even in the match. He finally got his shot at glory in 2007 at No Mercy when he faced off against Batista for the world title. Now, if you've never seen the Punjabi Prison Match, let me explain what it looks like. It's basically two gigantic cages made of bamboo, one inside the other, and they look more like something out of a jungle than a wrestling ring. The inner cage is 16 feet tall with 4 sides, while the outer cage is an 8-sided monster standing 20 feet high. There's a door on each side of the inner cage, and wrestlers can request to have it opened by a referee. Unfortunately, each door can only be opened once for 60 seconds. If the door closes before they get through, it's padlocked for the rest of the match. Once all the doors are locked, the only way out is to climb over the top of the cage, which is adorned with, you guessed it, spikes. Because why not? Between the two cages, WWE sometimes threw in a couple of tables loaded with weapons, just to spice things up. But what's the real challenge? After you escape the first cage, you've got to scale the outer cage too, and the first guy to touch the floor wins. Simple, right? Not exactly. Fans were left scratching their heads trying to figure out what was happening, and honestly, so were the wrestlers. The whole thing sounded like it was designed by someone who watched one too many Indiana Jones movies. It's no surprise that the Punjabi Prison Match only happened twice, because both times the results were, well, less than impressive. Fans could barely see the action through the layers of bamboo, and the rules were so confusing that even the commentary team seemed lost. Looking back, it's hard to believe WWE ever thought this was a good idea. If your match requires a long-winded explanation just to make sense, it's probably not a good sign. And trust me, both Punjabi prison matches were disasters. You can bet WWE would prefer we all just forget about the whole thing like this next entry. The Kiss Cam Cringe. Vince McMahon has always had a quirky sense of humor, especially when it comes to massive guys doing goofy things. He seems to get a kick out of big wrestlers being either obsessed with women or getting embarrassed by them. Just look at guys like Mark Henry and Viscera, both of whom had their share of awkward romantic storylines. And then, of course, there was the Great Collie, who after his episode as a towering villain got turned into a babyface, with WWE deciding to run with the big awkward guy loves the ladies gimmick. Cue the Collie Kiss Cam, a recurring segment where week after week, we had to watch Khali awkwardly pucker up and smooch random women. If you were sitting at home wondering, what's the point of this? There wasn't one. It was pure filler, and not the good kind. It was the kind of segment where you'd check your watch or get up for a snack because you knew nothing important was happening. They even gave Khali the moniker of the Punjabi Playboy because apparently the sight of this 7'1" giant awkwardly wooing women was supposed to be entertaining. Khali's romantic escapades didn't stop there. He got to kiss a handful of WWE divas like Eve Torres and Mickie James on live TV. They even paired him up with Natalya for a while as part of a bizarre comedy duo. And let's not forget Hornswoggle tagging along for the ride, because of course why not? And just when you thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous, along came Santina Marella, Santino's sister, for her turn on the Khali Kiss Cam. Yes, Santina, a dude dressed up as a woman, had a kiss cam moment with Khali. It's another one of those moments in wrestling history that's so cringeworthy that it's etched into our memories despite all our efforts to forget it. In short, the whole Punjabi Playboy phase felt like a comedic detour that didn't really land unless you were Vince, who probably found it hilarious. For the rest of us, it was the kind of content we'd rather pretend never happened. And now WWE is trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug, but nothing is ever completely hidden on the internet. Khali's drug incident. For some bizarre reason, the 2006 Great American Bash seemed to be cursed, and it all boiled down to 3 wrestlers who had elevated liver enzymes. Now, if you're scratching your head wondering what that even means, it's basically WWE's polite way of saying they were using performance-enhancing drugs. The unlucky trio, Bobby Lashley Super Crazy, and none other than the Great Collie, who was supposed to take on The Undertaker in the first ever Punjabi prison match. Yeah, the timing couldn't have been worse. With Khali benched, WWE had to scramble and quickly change the booking. They cooked up a plan where Big Show ambushed The Undertaker backstage, leading Teddy Long to pull Khali from the match and replace him with Big Show. The thing is, this was supposed to be Teddy's way of punishing Big Show, forcing him to participate in what many consider to be a disaster of a match. Even though Khali wasn't wrestling, he didn't completely sit this one out. He made an appearance towards the end of the brutal showdown, but instead of jumping in to add any drama, he just stood there. It was like showing up to a party after all the fun was over. You're there, but it doesn't really matter. The Undertaker ended up winning the match by simply falling falling out of the door. Yes, you read that right. It wasn't the climactic moment you'd expect, and the crowd's reaction reflected that. It was more of a confused murmur than a thunderous cheer, mainly because no one really understood what the heck the rules were. The real deal here is that this entire match, the infamous Punjabi Prison Match, was designed specifically for the Great Collie. But thanks to his elevated liver enzymes, WWE's code for he failed a drug test, Khali was forced to miss out on the very match meant to showcase him. Since WWE never fully explained why Khali wasn't in the ring for his own creation, it's one of those moments they'd rather fans forget ever happened. It's as if the match itself was a puzzle, and WWE left out a few key pieces on purpose. Vince McMahon's obsession. As odd as it may seem, Vince McMahon has made it crystal clear over the years that he has a serious fascination with giant wrestlers. From King Kong Bundy to Andre the Giant, Vader, The Big Show, and even The Undertaker, Vince always seems to have at least one towering figure looming over his active roster. It's like he has a checklist that reads, must have one giant at all times. The arrival of these giants in the main event scene showed wrestling fans a lot about Vince's vision for WWE. He loves his larger-than-life spectacles, and giants fit that mold perfectly. But out of all the titans who have stomped their way into the WWE, the Great Collie arguably stands out for all the wrong reasons. Standing at a staggering 7 feet tall, Khali looks like a force to be reckoned with. But once he gets in the ring, well, that's a different story. Watching him wrestle feels more like watching someone try to walk after doing leg day for the first time. Awkward and painful. Khali barely wobbles around the ring, let alone deliver a good wrestling match. And yet, Vince employed him, not for his technical prowess, obviously, but because he was a special attraction, a marketing gimmick, the kind of guy who could sell tickets based on his size alone. But did it work? Not so much. Khali's presence in WWE is a good reminder that this isn't just a wrestling show. It's a dramatic series full of unique, sometimes bizarre characters. He was more spectacle than substance. The problem? Wrestling fans can sniff out a phony act from a mile away, and once the initial wow, he's huge moment wears off, if there's no real talent or depth to back it up, fans start to tune out. That's exactly what happened with the Great Collie. His size got him noticed, but his lack of in-ring ability made him one of the least memorable giants Vince ever put in the spotlight. For a guy who's supposed to be a powerhouse, Khali ended up being more of a sideshow attraction. A gentle reminder that sometimes, even in wrestling, bigger isn't always better. Collies Limitations. When it comes to WWE, the term wrestling can mean a lot of things. Not everyone is going to pull off the flashy technical moves of someone like Kenny Omega, but if you're a WWE superstar, you need at least enough skill to tell a good story in the ring, especially over a 20-minute match. Unfortunately, that's where the Great Collie falls short. Khali's go-to move? Slapping his massive frying pan-sized hands across his opponent's chest. And while yes, those hands are probably powerful enough to knock the wind out of anyone, that's about as deep as his wrestling playbook goes. In the ring, he's severely limited. There aren't many moves he can do, and even fewer he can chain together to build any kind of momentum in a match. It's why most of his matches seem to consist of him standing there, raising his giant arms in the air like he's a human skyscraper, while everyone else does the heavy lifting, sometimes literally. WWE clearly saw this limitation, so they did what they do best. They packaged him like a spectacle. They leaned into the fact that Khali is a literal giant and a freak of nature, hoping that fans would focus more on his size and less on the fact that he couldn't wrestle a technical match to save his life. The idea was simple. Everyone would focus on his size because who cares if he can only do 3 moves? It worked to some degree. Khali's size alone drew attention, especially from casual viewers who had never seen someone like him before. But for those paying close attention, it was hard to ignore that he lacked the in-ring ability of, say, a Shawn Michaels or even a Big Show, who at least had some technical chops despite his size. In the end, Khali's appeal was more about the spectacle and less about the wrestling, which is probably why over time his role in WWE became more of a sideshow than anything else. He was the giant who could chop people down with his massive hands, but that's about where his contributions ended. Enjoyed the video? Crave more excitement? Stay tuned by clicking on any of the cards on your screen right now for more thrilling content. See you next time.